Are you excited? I am excited! Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads, and today I want to talk about my top 5 fantasy books and my top 5 sci-fi books that I've read in 2021. Fair warning up front, I'm splitting both genres. I'm not doing top 10 and including both of those. I thought I have a specific top 5 fantasy and a specific top 5 sci-fi to make it a bit easier, but I kept it in one video because they are pretty close together, so, you know. And we're going backwards. Just in case you're interested. So honorable mention and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, woo! I don't know if the stuff I do makes sense. I'm trying to explain it, and then when I listen to myself, I'm like, huh? Whatever. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. You know what? Let's just jump right on in. Starting with sci-fi. My honorable mention for sci-fi is Sylvain Neuvel's The Test. This is a book that I got off of Emily Fox's booktube channel, and her booktube channel is Reading with Emily, Books with... I put the link down below. I always forget what her YouTube channel is called. But this is a pretty short story. It's about a guy who is doing the British citizenship test. And the test is not what you would expect. The reason why it's an honorable mention is it was too short, in my opinion. I would have loved a lot more depth around it. Could have been easily a regular novel versus what is it? Short? It's not a short story. Novella, I think is the right word for that, right? It was such a fun read. It was not what I was expecting. It was completely messed up. Highly recommend it. If you haven't read this and if you're looking for some quick and easy read, definitely do that. And with that, we're coming into our top 5. And spot number 5 is for The Android Stream from John Scalzi, not Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Different book. And the reason why I love this so much is the snarky humor. His humor was so entertaining. I listened to it as an audiobook, so I had my, laugh out loud type of moments in there. And then just the story itself is very quirky. It's about a kind of trade gone wrong with an intergalactic race, and now the main character is trying to fix it. And he is running into issues, but he is a bit clumsy, and then at the end of the day, they save the world. Moving up, number 4 has to be Machine Hood. I've talked about that quite a bit on this channel already, and I think more people need to read this. For the longest time, I thought no one knows about this book, but then I saw it as part of the Goodreads, whatever awards they have at the end of the year. It got 600 some odd votes and was pretty far down. But why have I no one heard talk about this book? First of all, it's a female author in sci-fi, if that is something you're looking for. And then she is from India. So another diversity plus point. Again, not the reason why this is number 4, but it just adds to the incredibleness of this book, if that is a word, I don't know. Such a creative story. I really enjoyed the writing. The plot was superb. The characters were actually really interesting, and the world this was set in with the future she plotted out here was also really good. From what she was describing around AI and how robots would work and what they could do versus not do, I thought this was actually pretty close to even today's reality. And I thought she had a really interesting angle on combining science with religion in this book. All right, my number 3... And now this was no difficult. So between Machine Hood, my number 3, and the number 2, I was going back and forth, but I decided to go this way. So number 3 has to be Dune. I read Dune, not this exact copy, a different one. I just had this one that I could grab. I actually have 4 copies of Dune right now. It's ridiculous. But that's the copy that I could get to the easiest way without, completely unmounting my bookshelf. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Dune. I liked, in particular, the first book. I was really fascinated by it. I completely loved the plot point. I really enjoyed the dialogue and the in-between-the-lines type of stuff that is happening here. I'm in awe with that story and what Frank Herbert has done with this. The reason why I think this is worth it, and not just this one, especially in Dune Messiah, it really comes out, is that not everything that seems good is really good. That discussion around what is good versus evil is just incredible in Dune and Dune Messiah. And then political conversations and just the whole political backstabbing and all that kind of stuff. It was just phenomenal. All right, we're coming to number 2, and that might be a surprise. because I did a half year view on what I read in the first half of the year and did a quick top books that I've read till that time. I think I mixed sci-fi and fantasy at that point. But the number one there is my number two now. And that has to be Project Hail Mary. Great book. There's nothing else I can say about this. So first of all, I don't want to say anything. I know I did a review on that and I tried to stay really, really awake in my review on this book. And I will continue to do so. Do not watch too many reviews. Just read this book. There's something in this book that just made me fall in love with it. And I loved it so much that I read it twice this year, and I was contemplating more than once if I should read it a third time. First read was as a book, second read was as an audiobook, and then audiobook adds something really interesting on top of it. I'm still in love with this book. Oh my goodness. And I've gifted it to a couple of folks. And yeah, it is just a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you have to read it. Seriously. Get to Project Hail Mary. And with that, what could be my number one? What else did I read that is better than Project Hail Mary? Well, let me tell you, it's Foundation. I don't know if I could pick any one book of the series. If you want me to pick a book, it had to be 2 or 3. It wouldn't be one. One is probably the weakest of all, although I fell in love with number 1 already. And then it just continue to blow my mind with book 2 and 3. What is happening here? I mean, this was just incredible. I still don't believe that I read this and what happened here and how brilliant this plot is. I mean, yeah, I've gushed about it a couple of times by now. I have a review for book 1. I talked about book 2 and 3 in my mid-December bi-weekly ramblings. I'll put it up here. I don't think this is for everyone. I think there are things happening within the plot that make it a book that not everyone would be as excited about as I am. If you don't mind that there is not much character world and it's really more a focus on the plot itself, you are going to love it. But just do not expect too much character work. And same with the world. There is no vivid explanation about how every city looks like, or how the planets look like, or how, the whole system works together. There's some, and that little bit that you get is really, really great. But the story itself is just mind-boggling and, yeah, literally. And that's all I'm going to say. Let's jump into fantasy, because that's what I read the most of. And I have to say, this year has been a really weird one. So I looked through all the fantasy books that I read, and I definitely experimented. I definitely read a lot of fantasy books that are not my typical wheelhouse, and that is good. And alpha good that I now have a better idea of what are the type of tropes or stories that I might want to take a second or third look at. Let's get to the runner-up, which is Winterlight, Kristen Britton's book number 7 in the Green Rider series. And the reason why it's just an honorable mention is I didn't want to include something that was a reread for me. Not that Winterlight was a reread. That book just came out this year. The entire Green Rider series, as you know, I'm a huge fan, and I get sometimes a little carried away. And I wanted to focus on other books in my top 5. Plus, Winterlight is really not my favorite. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. All the Green Rider books have, by definition, 5 stars for me. But if I'm looking at it realistically, this is not a top 5 book. But, there can't be a video without talking about Green Rider. So, honorable mention for Winterlight. Okay, let's talk about number 5, which is Empire in Black and Gold. And I will talk about that a little bit more in my most surprising books in 2021 as well. But I loved this one. I loved the world in here. I loved the discussion around all the different races and their history and, just the setup of the world in general. I think it is incredibly creative when it comes to the fantasy aspect of here, the magic aspect that is part of that. It has some kind of steampunkish elements. This does not extend to the series because I actually DNF'd the series, and again I will talk about that in my most surprising books of 2021 in that video. But this book, the first book of the series, definitely made it into my top 5, which leads us to book 4, which is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. And boy, I did not expect this. This, I think, is more dark fairy tale, kind of in that area of fantasy category. And I still don't quite know how to wrap my head around what happened there. I couldn't even explain what it really is about. And I went completely blind into it too, which probably added to the whole weirdness factor for me. So now we're getting into my top 3. And for the fantasy section, those top 3 were the difficult ones because I went back and forth on what should be number 2, 3, what should be number 1. It was really a smidge between everything. So theoretically, those are my 3 first spots that we're talking about. I love them all for very different reasons. Yeah, I don't know if I would call this book that I'm going to talk about first, third place. I have a hard time because I love them all. I truly love them all. So, start with the Gunmetal Gods series by Samuel Akhtar, which is the Death Rider is the prequel novella, Gunmetal Gods, which is book 1, and Conqueror's Blood, which is book 2. All self-published. So first of all, very dark, very bleak. I read an article at, what is it, the SPFBO, whatever, jumble the letters, how they fit. That thing that Mark Sullivan does for self-published ones. And Gunmetal Gods is actually the semi-finalist for this year. And he in his blog post said, trigger warning for literally everything. If you don't have issues with that, this is an incredible series that talks about politics. It has a really interesting take on religion and the what the gods and all that stuff looks like. I mean, here, you take a look at this cover, and that gives you an idea. The other thing that I really liked, and that came especially out in book 2, Conqueror's Blood, which was my favorite out of the 3 that I've read, is the aspect of you don't really know what's good or evil. And he makes it very clear that there is no black and white situation, and that even people that seem good can make decisions that are really not good. Boy, did I love my time with this, and I read that really fast as well, and I cannot wait for book 3. I think he said late, very late this year, so I'm really hoping that it comes out very late this year. My second first place has to be the Shadows Histories duology, in particular book 2. This is more historical fantasy. It's a retelling of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, and at the same time, the slave uprising in, I think it was Haiti is what it is now. It's basically the exact retelling of what happened back then, but with magical elements. It is incredibly slow. That is probably the slowest paced fantasy or general book I've read in my entire life, and I never thought I would enjoy something like that. And then the last book, which is first place number 3, caused me to rejiggle my whole top 5 because I started preparing that in early December, but I knew I wanted to wait till the end of the year because I had a couple of books that I thought, maybe they will be added to that top 5 list. And yes, there was one book that I read really late in the last year that had to be added to my top 5 list, and that's Bear in the Nightingale. Evie, you're going to be happy about this. I read that right around Christmas, and what? It was so much fun. It's a fairy tale type fantasy based on Russian folklore. And I loved it so much that I immediately ordered book 2 and 3. And that book 2 is already on my January TBR. And I just have to continue reading this. The prose is incredible. It reads like a fairy tale, which I find incredible that people still have the capability of doing that. I loved our main character, Vasia. I loved the fantasy or the magic element that is part of the story. How our main character discovers these things, how she deals with them, how she uses them to protect the village she lives in, how she deals with the doubters, and it was just beautiful. It really reminded me of a fairy tale that you read when you're young and whatnot. So yeah, as you can see, my 3 number 1 spots are very, very different, and I love them for very different reasons. I hope you enjoyed this, and now I want to know from you. What was your number 1 fantasy and what was your number 1 sci-fi pick of 2021? Is there anything that I need to add to my 2022 list? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I have a couple more videos coming out as part of my 2021 review series, and I don't want you to miss those. So yeah, I hope I see you soon with my next video. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Bye!